You are watching Daughters of the King, a ministry designed to uplift and encourage women of all colors and ages through everyday struggles of life. Many of us women have been beat down in the waves of life, and our goal is to help you come to the knowledge that you are loved by God. It doesn't matter what walk of life you have come from. God is calling you forth to fulfill your destiny in Him. Stay tuned for tonight's message, starting now. Hey, welcome back to Daughters of the King. I'm Kathryn Gore. Thank you for joining us. And tonight we're going to talk about prayer types. We're going to talk about the Watchmen prayers. But before I get into tonight's lesson, I just want to give you an update on the Daughters of the King podcast. We just had an amazing interview with Mary Burrell. If you have not checked that interview out, please go check it out. It was about, can Christians have demons? And the answer is yes. Christians can have demons. So go check that out and be blessed. We had an open discussion about Star Wars and how that movie was so prophetic. It was just an amazing movie. Kathryn Gore, my husband, and I spoke about it. If you have not heard that yet, go check it out. You will hear where the Father's heart is at. You will hear how the prodigals are coming back home and how the Star Wars movie was just so right on where God is at. I mean, He's restoring relationships. He is destroying the works of the enemy. It's just so much that movie gave us as far as insight prophetically. And if you haven't heard it, go on our podcast and check it out. It was a great discussion that my husband and I shared with the people, and it was just amazing. You will hear where God is at. So check it out. Feel free to place a comment on Daughters of the King podcast and we will respond. So tonight we are talking about Watchmen prayers. We're talking about what it means to be a watchman. So I want to open up with Ephesians 6:14. And I want to kind of sum up a little bit of it, but then I want to jump down and focus in on Ephesians 6:18. But, you know, Ephesians 6 is talking about you basically putting on the armor of God so that you can stand against the wiles of the enemy. But when verse 18 comes in, it says, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. And for me, that utterance may be given to me, this is Paul, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in it I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. Now, I'm putting emphasis on being watchful to this end. I'm putting emphasis on Paul saying that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel. So this is a part of what the watchmen duties are. They watch and they speak. Okay, they watch and they speak. Now, after studying about a watchman, I found that many scriptures, there's so many scriptures that talk about the watchman, talks about the watchman on the wall. It talks about prophets being a watchman, which we're going to talk about tonight. But overall, a watchman is a person who stands guard to see, to hear, and to warn the people that the enemy is coming into the camp. They are anointed by God to carry out this special duty, this special work for the people of God. Now, everyone is called to be a watchman to a degree, but many will not see the enemy coming into the camp if God has not equipped you to be a true watchman. You know, like, many of us can see something's not right. You know, our spirit man goes crazy and we're like, the enemy is in here somewhere. But some people can see the enemy come a mile away, and it's just an instinct. It's like second nature. And instantly they go into prayer, they go into battle, and they pray on behalf of that situation, or they sound the alarm. Many faithful watchmen in the Bible saw their enemies coming, and they immediately alerted the people. Now, in the natural, a watchman stands in a high tower or a high post to watch over the area, and so it is in the spirit, right? So being a watchman in the body of Christ, a watchman sits in a high place. Why? They need to be so close to God that they can receive revelation from God on what is taking place in the spirit realm. A watchman is going to obey. They're going to have the character of God. They're going to do what God tells them to do. They're going to alert the people. It is some stuff that the prophet Ezekiel had to go through because he was a watchman. And I was telling my husband, I wouldn't want to be Ezekiel. And I told my husband, if God uses him as he used Ezekiel, please tell me so I don't feel like I'm losing my mind, because Ezekiel had to go through some stuff because he had to warn the people, and he had to hold and carry the judgment of the people himself. And God said, if you don't do this, if you don't blow the trumpet, if you don't sound the alarm, the people blood is going to be left on your hands. And I was like, I would like to meet Ezekiel in heaven when I go into heaven, because he paid a price and he didn't ask for it. He didn't ask for it. And that's the funny part. Many people don't ask to be watchmen. They really don't. So God came to Ezekiel and he said this. He said, Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore, hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. And you can find this in Ezekiel 3:17-19. Now, a watchman can pray to God, cry out to the Father because of what they see, but God has placed judgment on the people, and the watchman is going to have to speak judgment out of their mouth on behalf of God. Now, that's this right here. This kind of messed with Habakkuk. I can't say his name properly, but Habakkuk was also a prophet, and he was a watchman. And in one point of his journey with God, he got upset with God because he didn't like the way that God was handling situations pertaining to the people. And he questioned God, and he cried out to God, told God how he felt. After he got it off his chest, this is what he said to God. He said, I will stand at my guard post and station myself on the tower, and I will keep watch to see what he will say to me. He is God. And what answer I will give as his spokesman when I am reproved. Now, what happened was Habakkuk thought that God was in agreement with evil, because God was not doing anything to help in his eyes to help the righteous, and he didn't like how the people who were just pure evil come in and devour the people of God. And God told Habakkuk, this is judgment. He said, look around, this is judgment. So after he got it off his heart, he had to stand in faith. Habakkuk had to stand in faith that God would strengthen him to get through the judgment of the people. But this bothered Habakkuk because he was like, God, he was like, oh my Lord, aren't you a man who doesn't sit and like evil, certain things like that he was just not happy about. And he had to come to the realization it wasn't nothing that he could do about it, because this was something that God had to do in order for the people to understand that God is who he is. And honestly, this is happening to America right now. A lot of people are being judged. A lot of people, judgment is here in America, or it's coming in. No, judgment is here. Judgment is here. And people are being exposed in their darkness, and God is about to take the hammer and knock it all apart, because enough is enough, right? He has work to do, and you will see how God will move. And it's certain people who are saying, I don't understand what God is doing, because it's not right that certain things are happening. And hey, call it what you want. If you are right before God, God is going to protect you. He's going to do what he said he's going to do, because America will not bow down to God's desire. America has idols, and America is not living right before God, and God has to come and bring his judgment before anything can take place to clean it all up, and then all will be well. So just hold on. Okay, just hold on. Now, I found an article by a gentleman named Henry Blackaby, and it's called A Role of a Spiritual Watchman. And I want to share a small part with you, because I think it's very interesting. I think you should be able to understand more about what a watchman, as far as a spiritual watchman, does. And when I read this, I really felt like my husband is just all in this, because this is his characteristic. And I was like, wow, I wonder, does he know that God has called him to be a watchman? I don't know if God called him to be a watchman, but he has all of these characteristics, and it's just mind-blowing. So Henry says every believer is called to be a spiritual watchman to some degree in his or her prayer life. It may be a watchman upon the walls of your family, or the walls of your church or your city, or God may entrust you with being a spiritual watchman on the walls of the nation. Some may have a more advanced calling in this aspect of their prayer life. A spiritual watchman is one who has been uniquely equipped by God to see. In Matthew 13, God says that every believer has been given eyes to see and ears to hear, but a watchman has to be equipped by God to see what others do not see. And he has a unique capacity to see when the enemy is invading. And this is why I said this is my husband, because he can spot things from a mile away. And sometimes I don't even believe what he's saying. And I'm like, come on, hon, are you serious? And I'm telling you, it plays out almost every time. And I'm like, I'm just going to shut my mouth next time. And you would think that I will learn from how everything plays out. It's so amazing. So the article continues to say the enemy comes disguised, but a spiritual watchman is very alert and blows the trumpet and gives a sound that family members can be quickly warned and not destroyed. Or he may be given spiritual eyes to see something that is happening in the life of the church. The watchman suddenly realizes that something has come in, and there is turmoil and dissension and conflict. Now, a watchman doesn't just see and observe or hear. A watchman blows the trumpet. The watchman sounds the note the enemy is approaching, or the enemy has slipped in. In history, the watchman on the walls carried with him the safety of the entire city. That city could sleep at night knowing the watchman was on the wall. If they, with the uniqueness of their sight and hearing, noticed that the enemy was creeping up to the wall, they could blow the trumpet, or the scripture in Joel says, lift up the ram's horn and let the sound go out and give the warning, so people could ready themselves and not be taken unawares. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm wearing the Star of David tonight. And I brought this today, honestly. And it's funny because I was doing some research, and I was not expecting to run across articles about Jerusalem. And this Star of David is symbolic for the people of the Jewish people. This is God's chosen people. And we as Christians are supposed to pray on behalf of their salvation, pray on behalf of them to keep them covered. We are supposed to be in agreement with God that his people are going to come back home. And a lot of people are going against the Jews right now. And when I saw this, I was just drawn to it. I never had a Star of David necklace, but today I bought it. And I ran across an article that I want to share really quick because I thought it was interesting. And this is about Jerusalem. So just real quick, it says, in biblical Israel, as throughout most of the ancient world, guards or watchmen stood in watchtowers at strategic locations looking for enemy arrivals and blowing the trumpet to warn of their approach. Even today, there are guard towers and stations throughout Israel manned by the Israeli Defense Forces, security guards, or local residents of the village. In many ways, believers in the God of Israel and the Messiah Yeshua are also called to be watchmen. God so yearns for the safety and protection of Jerusalem in the last days that he says, on your walls, O Jerusalem, I have appointed watchmen all day and all night. They will never keep silent. You who remind the Lord, take no rest for yourselves. And that's in Isaiah 62:6. Whenever things in Israel look dark or difficult, we who stand with the Jewish nation can take encouragement from God's word, for he himself is the Shomar of Israel. He who watches Shomar over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. And you can find that in Psalms 121:4. It says the watchmen, shomermen appointed by God on the walls of Jerusalem could be angels, such as those the watchers in Daniel 4:17, or the ones who patrol the earth in Zechariah 1:10, or the one who fought against the prince of Persia on his way to minister to Daniel in chapter 10 of the book of Daniel. Many believers think of themselves as these watchmen over Jerusalem. Thousands of prayer warriors around the world continually pray for the shalom, which is peace, of Jerusalem. It is reported that in South Korea, for instance, hundreds of Christians get up daily at 4 a.m. to pray for Israel. Go Israel! We are on your side. Others try to preserve the souls of the Jewish people by warning them about their need for salvation through Yeshua. Guarding Israel in these ways is the desire of God's heart. As he tells the prophet Ezekiel, I look for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land, so I would not have to destroy it, but I found no one. And that's in Ezekiel 22:30. Going back to Henry's article, Henry wrote, what about your role? He says, when you go to pray, God may lift you up to a level that you've never been before. And he will say to you, I've set you as a watchman. And he will tell you what the parameters are of your assignment. Are you watching over your grandchildren? Are you watching over your church family? Are you watching over your city or the group of churches that make up your denomination in that city? Where has God placed you in your prayer life? Now, this article was written around the time that they had a special conference. And the conference was called Praying for a Change. And this was back in, I think, 2007, 2006. So it's been a while. But this is still a great article that we can learn from. And he said, I believe one of those moments when God initiates a change is when he calls you and me to be a watchman on the walls of his people somewhere. And he said, do not take this lightly. He said the enemy will come, but God is wanting someone to blow the trumpet. Have you said, I'm too old, or nobody will listen to me? They may not listen to you, but they may listen to the trumpet sound. When you blow the warning, they may listen. My prayer, Henry's prayer, is that you will never again be a watchman on the walls of God's family and see the enemy come and fail to blow the trumpet or sound the alarm. He said, you must sound the alarm or you will never know that they ought to take warning or that there is an enemy. They will never know that. So it says God may give you an insight that they do not have. The Bible simply says that God places watchmen on the walls of his people. Would you open your heart to God to be a spiritual watchman, to hear and see what others may not? And will you say to God, whatever you show me that is putting your people in danger, Lord, give me the spiritual boldness and courage to put the trumpet to my lips and blow the warning so that nobody will be where the enemy is destroying and not realize that what is going on and that we need to pay attention. Henry's article was really, really good. The Jerusalem article was really, really good. And with the research that I found, it's just basic instructions. God appoints a watchman to hear, to see, and to speak. Whatever is going on, they should be able to see the enemy come into the camp. They should be able to have revelation of what's going on, and they should be able to sound the alarm and alert people. So this is what God has placed on the hearts of many of his children, because he wants us to be in a position where we are able to see and pray and defeat the enemy that may come into our territory. He wants his people to be set free. So the only ways people are going to be set free is if somebody's watching, right? If somebody's hearing and somebody knows the Spirit of God and able to pray, speak, intercede, and warn the people. So would you be one? Would you ask God to give you that position? Only you would know. But I hope that you understand that a watchman is a very serious position. And if you feel led in your spirit to speak to God about it, I pray that God will bless you and anoint you to take a position to be a watchman on the wall, because we need people to sound the alarm. We need people to wake up, and we need people to know that the enemy is on the scene. So I hope you got something out of this message. I will see you next week as we go forth with more of the prayer types and prayer styles. But tonight you be blessed, because we are in a new season and we need each and every one of you to have ears to hear, eyes to see, to alert everybody that the enemy is here. Have a good one. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Daughters of the King. We appreciate your support. You can reach me at www.dotking.org. That's www.dotking.org. You can subscribe or send a message through live chat, or you can send an email to Kathryn, Kathryn, at dotking.org. This ministry is designed to speak to your heart. Feel free to share your thoughts about the message or give insight on a topic that you would like for me to discuss. We are here for you.